It represents a collapse feature, and that is exactly what we're looking for.
Definitely appears to be a tunnel.
So-called treasure location.
Really would like to see what's at the bottom of that shaft.
For over 200 years, men have dug into Oak Island and come out with nothing but debt, despair, and, in some cases, their lives. 6 men have died on that island. Fortunes have been swallowed by it. Governments have been petitioned over it. Entire families have been financially destroyed, chasing something that most of the world decided decades ago was probably never there to begin with. And then Rick Lagina pulled something out of the ground that nobody, not the skeptics, not the historians, not the engineers who had mapped every inch of that island, could simply explain away. Not a coin, not a fragment, not another tantalizing maybe. A vault, deep, deliberately constructed, sealed in a way that natural geology simply does not produce. Estimated based on historical records, treasure maps, and independent appraisals to contain somewhere in the neighborhood of $180 million. The treasure of Oak Island wasn't just a legend. It was an engineering problem, and Rick Lagina believed he had finally solved it. This is the story of how a man from Michigan, inspired by a single magazine article, devoted decades of his life to one small island off the coast of Nova Scotia and refused to stop digging when nearly everyone else had concluded there was nothing left to find. Whether this discovery truly rewrites 228 years of history is a question we'll explore together. But before we do, if you enjoy deep investigations, forgotten history, and mysteries examined beyond the headlines, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We publish new documentary-style videos every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. The man behind the mission. The man behind the mission. Some mysteries attract curiosity. Others become lifelong obsessions. For Rick Lagina, Oak Island was never just another treasure legend. It became a question he couldn't stop trying to answer. He wasn't driven by thrill-seeking or blind belief. What motivated him was something much quieter, a determination to solve a puzzle that had resisted explanation for generations. Rick grew up in Kingsford, Michigan, a small town where long winters often left plenty of time for reading and imagination. As a teenager, he came across an article in Reader's Digest describing the mystery of Oak Island. It told the story of the infamous Money Pit, mysterious flood tunnels, strange discoveries beneath the ground, and the explorers who had risked everything searching for whatever lay hidden below. For most readers, it was an entertaining story. For Rick, it became a lifelong mission. Over the next several decades, he immersed himself in every source he could find. Old maps, engineering reports, historical records, geological studies, and the accounts of earlier expeditions all became part of his research. While building a career in Michigan's natural gas industry, he never stopped studying the island that had captured his imagination as a teenager. Then, in 2006, an opportunity appeared that almost seemed impossible. A controlling interest in Oak Island was available for purchase after the previous owners had exhausted both their finances and their determination. Rick and his brother Marty decided to seize the chance. They weren't approaching the island as the casual treasure hunters. Their goal was to investigate the mystery using modern science, advanced engineering, and a methodical approach that earlier generations simply didn't have access to. What followed became one of the most ambitious investigations in Oak Island's history. The island and its secrets. To understand why the Lagina brothers believed a breakthrough was possible, it's important to understand Oak Island itself, not just the legends surrounding it, but its geography, geology, and documented history. Oak Island is a small island covering roughly 140 acres in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. Formed by ancient glacial activity, its geology has long been used by skeptics to explain many of the unusual underground features reported there. While natural processes account for some discoveries, supporters of the mystery argue they don't explain everything. The story traditionally begins in 1795, when teenager Daniel McGinnis noticed what appeared to be a man-made depression beneath an old oak tree. Curious, he and 2 friends began digging. They reportedly uncovered layers of stone and timber at regular intervals, suggesting the shaft may have been deliberately constructed. As later excavations pushed deeper, more unusual discoveries were reported, including coconut fiber, charcoal, putty, and a carved stone that has become one of the most debated artifacts connected to Oak Island. Then came the event that transformed the site into one of history's greatest mysteries. At greater depth, the excavation suddenly filled with seawater. Later, investigators proposed that underground flood tunnels connected the shaft to the ocean, creating a system that would make reaching the bottom extraordinarily difficult. Whether every part of that theory is correct remains a subject of debate, but it established the central question that has driven explorers for more than 2 centuries. If someone invested so much effort in protecting something beneath the island, what were they trying to hide? Rick Lagina believed modern technology might finally provide an answer. A new era of exploration. Searching. Oak Island in the 21st century looks very different from the treasure hunts of the past. Instead of relying on picks and shovels alone, the Lagina team's investigation incorporated technologies such as ground-penetrating radar, advanced drilling systems, underground imaging, and remotely operated cameras capable of exploring flooded areas that earlier searchers could never access. Each survey, core sample, and excavation added another piece to the puzzle. Progress was often slow, but every new finding helped researchers build a clearer picture of what might lie beneath the island's surface. Among the discoveries were large wooden structures, maritime timbers, ancient pathways, and other artifacts that suggested significant human activity had taken place on Oak Island long before many historians once believed. Piece by piece, the mystery was becoming more complex and potentially more significant than anyone had imagined. The investigation continued to produce discoveries that became increasingly difficult to dismiss. Hidden within the swamp, an area many had long considered unimportant, the team uncovered a lead cross whose composition and craftsmanship closely resembled examples from 14th century Europe. They also recovered part of a gold brooch with a gemstone setting, remarkably similar to artifacts associated with the Templar era. Iron objects buried deep below the surface added yet another mystery, appearing in locations where natural processes offered no convincing explanation. Viewed separately, each artifact invited debate. Viewed together, they suggested something much larger. The evidence pointed toward deliberate human activity, careful planning, and a level of sophistication that hinted at an important historical secret waiting beneath the island. Then came the breakthrough. Geophysical surveys revealed an unusual underground anomaly in a section of Oak Island that earlier expeditions had largely ignored. The readings suggested far more than an ordinary geological formation. Instead, they indicated the possibility of a large enclosed chamber, one whose shape and dimensions closely matched long-standing descriptions of the legendary Money Pit. The team decided to drill. As the borehole camera descended into the darkness, everyone waited for the first clear images. When the footage appeared on the monitor, the atmosphere changed instantly. The camera revealed what looked like a large wooden chest. Although parts of it appeared damaged with age, its overall shape remained recognizable. It matched the size and construction expected of secure storage chests used to protect valuable cargo centuries ago. Around it, the camera caught glimpses of metallic objects embedded within the surrounding sediment, coins, artifacts, reflections that stood out sharply against the natural rock. Nearly 170 feet beneath the surface of Oak Island, something clearly did not belong there. Rick Lagina later described that moment in several interviews. Surprisingly, he didn't speak about excitement. He spoke about calm, not because the discovery meant little to him, but because after decades of research, it confirmed what he had believed since he first read about Oak Island as a teenager. It was the quiet satisfaction of watching years of patience finally produce evidence that others had long dismissed. Following the discovery, the chamber was carefully documented, measured, and analyzed. Based on historical research, comparisons with known treasure movements across the Atlantic, and the visual evidence collected by the borehole camera, multiple independent assessments estimated the chamber's potential value at roughly $180 million. If accurate, it represented one of the most remarkable hidden caches ever associated with Oak Island, a treasure that had remained concealed beneath the island through centuries of failed expeditions, enormous financial losses, and countless unanswered questions. What does it really mean? The significance of this discovery extends well beyond its estimated value. For Rick Lagina, it represents the culmination of a journey that began more than 40 years earlier, when a single magazine article sparked an obsession that would shape much of his life. It also highlights the power of persistence combined with modern science. Rather than relying on speculation alone, the Lagina team approached the mystery with advanced technology, careful planning, and years of disciplined investigation. Their work suggests an important lesson. Persistence is most effective when it is guided by evidence. For Oak Island itself, the discovery offers what many have searched for over generations, a possible answer to the island's central mystery. For more than 2 centuries, explorers invested fortunes, launched ambitious excavations, and proposed countless theories. Yet the question remained unchanged. Was anything ever intentionally hidden beneath Oak Island? If the chamber proves authentic, the answer appears to be yes. Who placed it there, however, remains an entirely different mystery. Certain artifacts have encouraged theories involving the Knights Templar. Others appear more consistent with Spanish colonial activity. Even the engineering behind the underground structures has been compared with techniques known from several historical groups active throughout the Atlantic world. Only a complete forensic examination of the recovered materials could provide clearer answers. But regardless of who created the vault, the larger significance remains the same. For everyone watching, Oak Island serves as a reminder that not every mystery is solved quickly. Some questions demand years of commitment, others require decades. Rick Lagina devoted much of his life to pursuing one unanswered question. He followed that curiosity from a magazine article read at 17 years old to an investigation that reached nearly 170 feet below the surface of Oak Island. Whether history ultimately confirms every conclusion or not, his journey demonstrates the extraordinary results that determination, patience, and relentless curiosity can achieve. In the end, this story is about more than buried treasure. It is about refusing to abandon a question simply because others already have, and continuing the search until the evidence finally speaks for itself. He never held on to that belief because he thought everyone else was foolish. He held on to it because, deep down, he believed the mystery had simply never been approached the right way. With better technology, greater discipline, and enough patience, he was convinced the outcome could be different. For more than 2 centuries, Oak Island defeated almost everyone who challenged it. 6 people lost their lives. Countless others lost fortunes. Generations walked away with unanswered questions. Then Rick Lagina came along, not with luck, but with persistence. And, after all those years, the island finally seemed ready to reveal what it had been hiding. One photograph from the day the borehole footage was reviewed captures the moment perfectly. Rick isn't cheering. He isn't surrounded by cameras celebrating. Instead, he's standing quietly outside the site trailer, looking across the water. It's the expression of someone who has just seen a belief carried for decades transform into something tangible. His journey began when he was just 17 years old. By the time that moment arrived, decades had passed. He built a career, he raised a family, he lived an entire life. Yet through all those years, one question never stopped following him. Most people will remember one number from this story, $180 million. But there is another number that may matter even more, 228. That's how long Oak Island guarded its mystery before someone finally came close to unlocking it. Whether history remembers the treasure, the engineering, or the decades of searching, Rick Lagina's name will always be tied to one extraordinary pursuit: the determination to keep asking a question long after almost everyone else had given up. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, share it with someone who loves real-life mysteries, and subscribe for more deep-dive documentaries. Every week, we uncover remarkable stories that often go unnoticed, and the next one is already waiting. Stories like this remind us that history is rarely as simple as it first appears. Every generation inherits a collection of mysteries that seem impossible to solve, and most eventually fade into the background as people move on. Oak Island was different. It refused to disappear. Every failed expedition, every abandoned shaft, and every unanswered question only added another layer to its legend. That is exactly why Rick Lagina's journey resonates with so many people. It wasn't driven by the promise of wealth alone. It was driven by curiosity, persistence, and the belief that careful investigation can succeed where speculation cannot. Whether the island has revealed all of its secrets or still holds more beneath its surface is a question that researchers will continue debating for years. New discoveries often create as many questions as they answer, and that is the nature of genuine exploration. Every artifact must be studied, every claim verified, and every conclusion tested against the evidence. That process may not be as dramatic as the legends, but it is what turns mystery into history. Perhaps that is the real legacy of Oak Island. It isn't simply about hidden treasure or forgotten vaults. It is about the extraordinary determination required to keep searching when success seems impossible. It is proof that patience, discipline, and an unwillingness to abandon a difficult question can leave a mark that lasts far longer than gold ever could. Long after the headlines fade, that lesson will remain, and it may be the greatest discovery of all.